Thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
Yes, all good. Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I have to say, it's quite strange actually talking to you in person because for me, your voice is synonymous with that guy who introduces many of the Selador mixes I've listened to over the years.
That's okay. And now you can see my face. See, this is why I do radio, you see.
And for those maybe listeners who are not familiar with Selador, it's your label, or the label you co-run with Dave Seaman, and obviously we'll dive into chat about that later. But yeah, what have you been up to? Have you been DJing at the weekend?
I just literally had a weekend off. Before that, I did Liverpool on the Friday, a brand new club called Capsule. So there's a club in Liverpool called the Invisible Wind Factory.
Right.
Really good club, like 1,500 capacity, but underneath is a club that they've had it a few times. They keep updating it, and now it's called Capsule, and I did the opening night, and it's amazing. It's like 350 capacity, really dark, literally underground because it's underneath the other club. Very cool, sort of flashy neon, like Berlin-y vibe lights, and the sound system is amazing. So
Nice.
yeah, I was very happy. And then I got up bleary-eyed and went over to Amsterdam where we did a Celedoria party on Saturday night at Lourdes 12 with me, Dave Seaman, Guy Manser. And I didn't quite know what to expect because the promoter was like, oh, the tickets are a little bit slow. And then on the night, it was amazing. It was rammed and brilliant atmosphere. So that was good. So this week, I was quite glad to have a weekend off, to be honest. They're few and far between now.
Do you get to DJ much in your home state of Liverpool?
No, little bit. Because the way the scene has kind of changed over the years. I mean, when I was 18, 19, I was playing 3 nights a week, every weekend. Whereas you don't get that weekly residency kind of thing anymore. So now I play for a few events who book me. 909 always book me. And there's a few others. But yeah, just 5-6 times a year. I would like it to be more. I do miss the days of weekly club residencies where you can just play, and there's a mixture of a core crowd and other people who come in and out, and they trust you and go with you, but week by week you can start making anthems out of nothing. I do miss those days.
And I'm sure that you also enjoy the fact that you can probably get home at a fairly decent time. And
yeah, it's good. I was home in like 15 minutes after I finished playing. I was like, wow, this is good. Not that I ever mind travelling or being away. I can never grumble because it's what I always wanted. So sitting on a plane, especially on the way there, I get the butterflies a little bit, like, oh, I'm going to Amsterdam. So,
well, it's a question that I was actually going to ask you later, but I guess now is a good time as any. But as you get older, is it kind of harder to kind of sustain that DJ life? All the kind of things that are associated, the lack of sleep, trying to catch planes, as you say, being surrounded by people up for the party if you maybe are not as much, and have you kind of had to change, I guess, your approach to gigs as you've got older?
Yeah, definitely years ago, I used to just about make it to the airport after very little or no sleep, straight to the after party, whereas I'm well behaved nowadays. So it's sensible. I haven't been drinking for about 6 months, so I find that very easy. Yeah. And it's very easy to just say no and escape from everybody now, because that's the last thing I want. Being up till silly o'clock in the morning with everybody licking their own eyebrows and stuff. So yeah, I just let them be. Traveling and stuff, yeah, it does take it out of you a bit, but I mean, it's a perk of the job, isn't it? I mean, I suppose you really get paid for waiting around and sitting on the plane. Get paid for playing music. You don't really get paid for that because that's the fun bit. That's the good bit. But yeah, I've really slowed down. I'm a lot more sensible. I wouldn't have been. I don't think I'd be able to do like 2 or 3 countries in a weekend every weekend. I think that'd finish me off because I'm still working during the week as well. So yeah, maybe sometimes I think I'm still 20, but I'm definitely not 25 now.
I'm sure. I wanted to start talking to you about the early days growing up in Liverpool, and getting into music by that I mean music in general as well as electronic music. Because as you know, we've chatted before, I have a real kind of fondness for the city because I spent 5 years of my life there between 95 and 2000, where I studied at John Moores University,
Yeah.
and I've got great memories of that period, particularly in terms of the nights out that had the likes of clubs such as Cream and Voodoo and the likes. You live in Liverpool right now, is that right?
Yes, yeah. I've always lived here. Yeah.
You've always lived there. And do you enjoy living there, or is it, do you live there because I guess that's just where you grew up and your family, where your family is?
A bit of both, really. I mean, I've always been here, and I've always lived within where I am now, within about a mile and a half of here, at different places. So I'm pretty fond. I'm in Crosby, which is about 5 miles north of the city. So we're a lot more suburban, and it's a bit quieter, and there's lots of families and schools and restaurants and stuff here, which is great. But if I want the mayhem, it's literally down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anyone follows me on social media, I think they know I've got a big affection for my city. I'm often bigging it up, just because of so many things. But yeah, and yeah, with the thought of, do I have to live here? Not necessarily, but I love it here. Maybe one day I'll move to Spain, but we'll see.
Yeah. I actually did my degree in urban planning when I was
Nice,
there.
okay, yeah.
And part of my dissertation was about the regeneration of Albert Docks, which
Right, okay, yeah.
had happened, I think, fairly recently. At the time, I went to live there in '95.
Yeah.
And I went back for, I think, my first time with my family last year. And it has changed a lot. Again, it seems like it's gone through another phase of regeneration in the 25 years that I last lived there. There's that Liverpool One shopping centre, for instance.
Yeah.
That wasn't there when I was there. And
No.
I had to think about what it used to be. And it was kind of some deserted plot of land back then, I seem to recall.
Yeah, Liverpool One, it originally was it was a hotel, a Holiday Inn that we always used to end in. It was the only place that would let you turn up at 3 a.m. with all your mates and sit in the bar. Or if they had rooms empty, our mate worked on reception. He used to be like, "Give us a tenner and you can have a room." So that was handy. So that was there. There was a big bus station there and a few clubs and a few shops.
Yeah.
But it was pretty. I think it must have been designed 70s, and it was of its era. So it's a lot fresher, more modern now. And yeah, Liverpool's just sort of expanded. I think since the capital of culture in 2008.
Yeah.
And then obviously the influx of money, then it's just turned a lot of corners, and it's very nice to see, because it was always a working city, northern, a little bit run down kind of thing from, it's famously run down from the sort of Thatcher era and stuff. So it was nice to see a whole new, different generation, especially when we'd had the highs of Cream and had been big, and before that it was Quadrant Park was a massive club, and then it going way back, you had like the Cavern and stuff, and then with this football association, it's nice that it's now a proper good northern city, because I was always very jealous of Manchester and the way that was developed a lot, because I mean Manchester's an amazing city, really, really good, and I always felt we were a little bit behind, but it's nice that we've I don't know if we completely caught up, but we've caught up a lot. I think we have caught up, and then I popped to Manchester and they've got something new, and I'm like, But I think Liverpool is kind of cut in half by the river.
Yeah.
So we're only kind of half the size of Manchester, so they can develop into a sprawling metropolis, can't they? Which I'm always a bit jealous of.
You've certainly caught up in terms of football.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
Yeah, let's maybe not go down that route. But
But you can do it if you like. I'm more than happy to do that.
I know you're a big Liverpool supporter.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too presumptuous, but I'm guessing you were growing up and first getting into music, in the 70s and 80s?
Yeah.
What were you listening to in your early days of, musical exploration, and were you kind of fully invested in a lot of the music coming out of the city at that time?
Right. Okay. Well, we always had the radio on in our house. So there were 2 stations in Liverpool. One was Radio Merseyside, so that was a proper BBC station, and Radio City, which was the typical big station with adverts, independent radio. And depending on what mood my mum and dad would be in, we'd flick between the two. We never listened to Radio 1 or anything like that. It was always one of those two. So I was... Radio City was pop music all day, mainly new, but also some old stuff. Radio Merseyside was a bit more of the safer pop music, and then classics. So I grew up listening to, then it would have been 60s tracks, maybe even 50s tracks, and then 70s, and Radio City was pushing out whatever was big at the time. So say, for example, I was 9 in 1980, so it would have been the big early pop stuff of that day. So because I was listening to the radio all the time, I was just a musical melting pot, taking all sorts in. So my mum liked everything from, and we always had records, which I was always a bit obsessed with. It's probably my mum and dad's fault I fell into this. So my mum had everything from ABBA to Earth, Wind and Fire to Otis Redding, whereas my dad would have ELO and Wings and the Beatles, but even like Chaz and Dave records. So I got introduced to all sorts. So I think even though today my tastes are very, very wild and varied, but the first kind of records I remember having, I remember the first musical album I got, which was the Beatles Blue Album, which is kind of like a best of kind of album.
Yeah,
it was never classed as a best of. Yeah. So that my dad said I grew up listening to I Want to Hold Your Hand, Please Please Me, all the well-known pop stuff from 1962, 63. But my dad said, you need to listen to this stuff. This is where they developed, and then they went into like all the Sgt. Pepper and Rubber Soul kind of stuff. And that was the first record I remember getting. It must have been about 10 years old. And I was like, why did he get me this? All these songs are weird. And then obviously I listened to them over and over and over. And yeah, that stood me in good ground just for an alternative kind of perspective musically. And it must have set me off on a musical path. And I'm still to this day a big Beatles geeky music fan. I still go to Beatles museums, Beatles tours. Last year we went to the National Trust have bought Paul McCartney and John Lennon's old childhood houses, and you go on tours of them. And I was in my element. Oh, yeah. I was the one asking questions. What about this? What about this? What about this? The poor fella was trying to go home and think, and I asked him about 500 questions. So brilliant. Yeah, so that was Beatles and stuff. Sorry, go on. What were you going to say?
No. Just going to say, there's lots of, as I listen to you recounting like stories of your childhood and what kind of got you into music, I see a lot of similarities, because actually one of my parents weren't really into music, but two artists that really stood out was one, the Beatles, and they had that Blue Album on vinyl. Yeah. And I much preferred the kind of more edgy side of the Beatles to the music that was on that Red Album. But also you mentioned Wings, and my dad had Wings' greatest hits, so I was really cool. I got into them, Live and Let Die. Yeah, and I still at my wedding, we played Silly Love Songs.
Nice.
Love that song.
What a tune. I love it.
Yeah.
That is very good. You've just sparked another memory for me. I remember my dad had an old Hitachi stereo that had a built-in radio, big speakers. And when he got this album called Wings Live Over America, so it was their live tour, and it had all been recorded and put on an album. I remember one day he was like, lie down on the floor, and he got the two massive speakers, put one on either side of me, and switched the light off, and went, listen to this and imagine you're there. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow. And that kind of really sticks in my mind. So, I've still got the copy on my shelf somewhere up there. I'm going to have to dig it out after this, because we're getting all reminiscent about it.
And you mentioned radio, and I saw something not that long ago on Instagram that you posted about you working for Pete Waterman, who, I guess for those people who don't know, were part of the very successful songwriting and record production trio Stockache and Waterman. At the time they were producing really big pop hits for the likes of, Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan. And I think you said you were working on his radio show. How did that come about? What were you doing?
Over time, I wanted to be... I remember listening to the radio one day and I thought, I would like to do this job. And I must have been about 12. Didn't think anything of it. And then I just thought, how am I going to get into this kind of thing? So when I used to pop into Liverpool city centre. In fact, Radio Merseyside was just in Paradise Street, where we were talking about before, right opposite that hotel that years later they used to let us in. But you used to be able to go into the radio station. They'd have a big glass window into the studio, so they'd have the sound pumping out of the station. You could watch them pressing jingles, changing the tracks, and I was thinking, this is amazing. So I got friends with a lad called Rick Horton, and he also wanted to be a radio DJ who lived literally around the corner from me. And then one year he got an old-fashioned double deck. So this must have been 1987 or something. So proper old-fashioned turntable double decks, 2 in there with a built-in mixer, built-in amplifier. You just literally plugged in the speakers, and there you go. So we used to do this pretend radio station. We didn't broadcast. It was just us annoying his mum, really. Just pretended to be DJs. We were full-on geeks. We had jingles and everything. And one day I said, why don't we start doing mobile discos? We've got the stuff. All we need to do is buy some lights. I've got records. You've got records. So when all this was happening, we used to still pop in to the radio stations. And I'd pop to Radio City as well, which is another one. Again, you could look in. You could see the DJs on. And Pete Waterman started a radio show called The Hitman. Obviously, later on, he did The Hitman and Hair, but this is this is the birth of it. Hitman. This was like 2 years before The Hitman and Hair. So we used to go on. We used to go in, and then one day I was like, I actually want to stay around and speak to him. And we just got speaking to him. We're like, oh, what was it like producing Rick Astley? Where did you find him? Blah, blah, blah. Every week we'd wait for him and wait for him. And then one day he came out and he's like, oh, it was crazy today. We couldn't get all the phone calls answered. So there was me, Rick Horton, and there was another lad called Ian Usher, who also, all of us, and Nick Goodman, another one, we all ended up working in the music industry later on. But we were like, we can answer your phones for you. He was like, okay, yeah. So that's it. We just went in every week. We didn't get paid because we were all about 15, 16, whatever. I think Ian was only about 12. I don't know. He used to get into town on his own. But it was an amazing experience. Just literally writing all these requests down, speaking to the people, taking it into Pete. And then Pete would read them all out. And he'd be like, oh, Steve, can't read your handwriting. And I used to buzz off like, oh, he said my name on the radio. And then as time
is
went
that why
by,
they were ringing up? Just purely for requests?
Just for requests, yeah. It was proper old school. Say hello to Joe in Southport. Say hello to Billy, who's off today to the match. It was just literally old school requests. And, oh, can you play the new Kylie one and stuff like that? But I mean, when the phone lines used to go crazy, it was like, there was a bank of 6 phone lines, and constantly for 2 hours, all 6 would be ringing. People wanted mentions of stuff. But as time went by, and I was started to buy more and more underground records with, I used to still buy pop music, but I used to buy a few underground records. I used to take some in, like, Pete, listen to this. And he used to just play some and be like, I like that. And he'd play it on the air, and I'd be like, yeah, he's playing my records. So yeah, that all happened. So yeah, that was great. I mean, he was, I think because he came from like a working class background, he just wanted to help people. So one day we were saying to him, could we come down to PWL, which is his recording studio in London, thinking he'd say no. And he was like, yeah, we'll sort it. So we asked him and asked him and asked him. And then one week he came in, right, you can come down in 2 weeks' time. Make sure your mum and dad say it's okay, and you can come into the studio. And we did. There was another lad then called Gavin. So 5 of us got the train down to London. And as we got in there, who walked in the studio was Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan. And we were like, whoa, this is insane. So then we went upstairs and Rick Astley's recording a song, and Pete took us all out for lunch. Come to my, I'm going to buy you food. And I thought, oh, he's a millionaire. He's going to buy us a slap-up meal. No, he took us to a Greasy Spoon cafe. And he went, do you know why I've brought you here? And I went, no. And he went, do you know why I brought my bank manager here? And I went, no, go on. He went, so he knows I don't waste money. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. So, yeah, they were mad times. They're obviously different times. You wouldn't really get a load of 15-year-olds going down to London to a recording studio that none of the mum and dads have met. But yeah, different times. It was so friendly, so encouraging.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it was funny, and it's a funny and different time. So when all my mates are saying, "Oh yeah, I was into Depeche Mode," I liked pop music, but that's fine. I mean, I did also like the Beatles stuff, but I also liked early hip hop a little bit later on. I also liked early house music. So yeah, my palette. In fact, I even liked Iron Maiden at one point. So yeah, I think that's my broad, wide, and weird and wonderful tastes.
Yeah, well, I was saying this on the previous podcast that I did, a live podcast with Red Freya and Reg and that, and yeah, one of the first 7 inches I ever bought was "I've Got to Be So Certain" by Kylie Minogue,
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
and I absolutely love that album. I can't remember the name of her debut album with "I Should Be So Lucky," which I
Yeah.
wasn't a big fan of that one, but "Je ne sais pas quoi," I remember that
Yes.
track. Yeah.
Who'd have thought we'd be going deep into Kylie Minogue's back catalogue?
Yeah.
Well, I took that album with me, and I've got a signed copy of it by her.
Okay. And you can see the pictures of you and Kylie and etc. down at the studio with Pete on your Instagram. It's worth checking it out. You know, a very young Kylie
very
Minogue.
young.
Is
yeah,
incredible.
all of us are a bit younger. Yes.
Yeah.
You still look at it now and go, oh yeah, you were destined to be a star. Look at you.
Yeah, absolutely.
She proper shines.
So at what point did you then think, you know, I want to be a club DJ?
Okay, well, while all of this was going on and my musical sponge was going on, because we had these double decks, I was starting to learn about other systems, and I'd learn about Technics decks, and I was like, oh, I really need to have Technics decks. Then DMC, which was the Disco Mix Club, they had this World Mixing Championships, so it was literally a DJ, 2 turntables, and they'd had like 6 minutes to show off and do as much scratching and cutting and mixing as they like, and I was obsessed with that. So that's when I was thinking, oh, that seems like a good thing. And then obviously I then learned about house DJs, house music DJs and club DJs. So I was like, oh, I like the sound of that as well. So all of these things were kind of interesting me, and at the same time I was still literally pretending to be a DJ while we were going out, because we had the stuff, we started doing mobile discos and stuff, and then I was literally aspiring to be a club DJ. I didn't know how it was going to happen, I didn't know what to do, but with the money that we used to make off mobile discos, I mean, we weren't exactly raking it in. Our first gig, me and my friend got £15 between us, right? So with that £7.50, we bought like a couple of pop records, but then I'd go and buy some weird early house track, and I'd be like, yes. And then I just remember thinking one day, imagine doing a whole set where you can just play house music. I thought, I bet nowhere exists like this. But then obviously over time, you're like, oh, there are clubs like this. So,
and who were those early house DJs that were knocking around then, and who you were listening to and possibly aspired to kind of follow in the footsteps of?
In Liverpool, I mean, I never really went. If you look at those photos, you'll see that I looked very young. Even when I was 18, I looked about 15, so there was no way I was getting into a nightclub. So I remember first going to under 18s nights, and there was one at Quadra Park, which later became a huge, massive clubbing institution. If anybody sees, there's like a black and white video of Enjoy Anthem that gets played, and the crowd go absolutely ballistic. When you're scrolling through Instagram or something, you'll see it on there. Anyway, that club, they used to do an under 18s night, and there was a DJ called Dave Ralph, who later went on to be on Perfecto Records and Resident Cream and stuff. But he was the resident of this under 18s night. So when I first went in, his first half an hour, he was playing things like De La Soul and proper old school hip hop and mixing it. And I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. And then his second part, he was doing house music. He said it was just his warm-up stuff to get practiced for other gigs. But then later on, he did all party stuff. But my favourite bit was I used to get in there the second it opened, so I could hear all this weird and wonderful music. And then at the same time, I must have discovered Stu Allen on Key 103. Now, I used to listen to him for his soul show and his hip-hop show. And then one day he said, yeah, don't forget to join me later for the all-new house show. And I was like, what? What do you mean there's a house show? What, a show with just house music on? There can't be. So I remember, and it didn't start till like 1 a.m. on a Sunday night. And I remember staying up and listening to it so quiet, just so I didn't disturb my mum and dad, because I was meant to be in bed by 11 o'clock or something.
How old were you at this time?
16 or something.
Right. Okay.
And then I just recorded and recorded Stu Allen week in, week out. I had so many cassettes. I don't know where they are. Maybe they're all in my mum's, but I'll have to dig them out one day because there must be like some legendary house music shows. And I was so obsessed and geeky with radio that there was a slight crackle with the signal because it came from Manchester. So my dad bought me this this radio aerial that was about 2 meters wide. And he attached it to our roof so I could get Key 103 crystal clear, whereas all my mates' tapes would be hissing and fuzzing. And I used to take mine in, they'd be like, how have you got this? How does yours sound so good? So because I was listening to crystal clear FM radio mixes of Stu Allen, I really got into my tunes. So I used to listen to it. This is old school for you. I used to record it on a Sunday, Monday morning, put it in my Walkman, put my Walkman headphones on, literally march to school. And then the second I got out of school, headphones on, let's listen to the rest of it. And I couldn't wait till the next day to go to school to listen to more. I was obsessed. 16, maybe 17, but yeah, when I was 17, I probably looked about 13. So
I could totally relate to what you talk about about taping the show. I used to do it with the top 40 on the Sunday night, and then listen to it throughout the week, and then because I didn't have many tapes, on the Sunday, I probably record over it again with the next top 40. Yeah. But also that sense of that feeling of excitement. When I started buying CDs, and I was really in my teens, I was really into grunge, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and I didn't have a CD Walkman, so I'd play the CD at home. I'd record it onto a tape, and then be very excited about the bus journey to school, secondary school. It was about an hour, and I was fine with that, and I wanted to sit on my own because I just wanted to listen to the music, and I'm actually still like that now. I really like time on my own where I can just listen to tunes. I was saying this to my son yesterday. We had a 50-minute car drive, and I said I enjoy these moments because I can, really, it gives me the chance to listen to new music or old music, or podcasts.
Yeah, it is. It's all very exciting, and I don't know if it's quite as big as it used to be, because back then, if you wanted to listen to music, you had to go out your way to listen to it. Whereas now, it's on your telly, it's on your computer, it's on your laptop, it's on Facebook. Whereas then, you had to actually record it or buy it, put it in your Walkman or your stereo, and sit there and listen to it. I know a lot of people were saying that with the short attention to detail of a lot of people now, because of things like Instagram and the scrolling and stuff, that people don't listen to music now. They listen to 30 seconds of it, and that's crazy. That is crazy, especially if you think back to the old proggy days where tunes were 12, 13 minutes long. They'd be like, why would you want a song like this when you can listen to 26 others?
Yeah, well, I've had this conversation many times, and I was only talking about it the other day. Music is becoming, for the very reasons you just said, very kind of throwaway, because when we were younger, I know that we sound like two kind of morny old guys here, but when you buy a record or a tape or a CD, but you invested your money into it. I invested money for my paper round or shelf stacking at Morrison's. You invested your money into it, and so you were really like, I'm gonna like this, even if at first you were like, oh, okay, maybe I like that track, the track that you kind of the standout track, maybe it was the single, the one that you knew, but it took you a bit of time to get into the rest of it. But you really invested in it because that was your hard-earned money, and usually you did grow to like it, not always, but like you say, now you kind of literally like don't like it after 30 seconds, move on, let's what's next kind of.
Yeah, especially if they don't. See, we were lucky that we bought it. We had the physical item. I listened to an interview recently of Paul McCartney, and he used to say he'd buy an album and he'd read the credits and who produced it all on the way home. He said that was almost as exciting as getting home and listening to it. I was like, yeah, I used to do that. I'm like, who are these people? What are the lyrics? What does that mean? What do they do? And you look at all the photos, which obviously you don't get that in the digital age. Although I think that is why things like vinyl sales and CD sales are starting to sneak back up again, because people are realizing, oh, you can own that. It's not just a track on Spotify or whatever. You can actually have it in your house. And yeah, I was a proper sucker for records. I majorly got into it And so I was always destined to be a DJ because I had far more records than anybody I ever knew, even before I was a DJ.
And I can see a big collection behind you there.
There's a few here. Yes, there's a
Yeah.
few. There's
No,
a few,
no,
and they're actually
yeah.
under the and there's a few thousand of my mum's, much to her horror still.
Brilliant. Well, talking about vinyl, I mean, you recently, or a few months ago, started a segment on your Instagram called Freebeat Thursday,
Yes,
where
yes.
you reminisce about the time you worked in Freebeat Records in Liverpool, which I guess at the time was the go-to independent records shop for vinyl junkies back in the '90s. I used to go there a lot in my uni days. Am I right in saying that you started in '98? I'm not sure if I read that
98, yeah.
somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah, I was there for 10 years, so 98 to 2008. I was just trying to think of doing something a little bit different, so Throwback Thursday. And it was actually, Will from Super Progressive. He
Yep.
was like, Steve, you can do 3-beat Thursday. I was like, I'm having that, Will. Thank
Yeah.
you. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many records and tales and stories and nights and moments that happened in a record shop that it's almost overwhelming knowing where to begin. So I had
Yeah.
to just literally go through my shelves and try and find just a load of 3-beat tracks that were big in 3-beat, not necessarily anthems, but maybe something that was big in maybe the progressive sound, or maybe something that was a little bit more obscure. Because what I did notice, if you do a post about, I did one about Breeder, the chain, which everybody went crazy for.
I saw it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then if I do another one about some obscure weird dub, you'd see people go, "Oh, I used to love this." Yeah, so you get a completely different type of engagement. But yeah, I like doing it. In fact, hold on a sec. This is my next selections I've got to go through here. So these are all big tunes at the 3-beat. So there's a little preview for the next sort of month or so.
I should say for those listeners who are listening on audio,
yes.
Steve just picked up some records and he's flicking through his extensive record collection. I mean, like you said, there's so many memories and stories of working in Freebeat. What would you say was the tune that you had the biggest demand for in the whole time you worked there? Can you remember?
I remember the first exciting one, which was in my first week of working in 3-beat, where I became the progressive house buyer. So it was up to me which records we bought in and how many. And that was Breeder, the chain, which is just one of the biggest progressive house records of all time. That for me, well, I'd worked in other record shops and a big tune would sell 10 or 15 of. This, I bought 200 in initially, which for me, I was very scared in my first week. I thought, oh, I'm going to bankrupt the shop. I thought, oh, this is going to last us some months. Hopefully I can get rid of these. Anyway, before Friday came, so this was on a Monday, before Friday came, all 200 are gone. I was like, oh, okay, it's like this in this shop, is it? Okay. And then a few others that were absolutely crazy were, there was a Matthew Decay bootleg remix of Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys. So one side was his remix and one side was an etched, I can't remember if it was the Beastie Boys or Matthew Decay logo, but they pressed 500 of them. And we kind of knew Matthew through some of his contacts, and he had a record label with 3-beat Label Management, which is another subsidiary of the shop. They help people run labels. And he said, right, I've got 500. How many do you want? Because I need to know how many to give to all the other shops. And I went, we'll take all 500. In fact, so we had every copy for the world. No other shop had it. And that was good. That was interesting because people are like, where can I get it? You can only buy it in 3-beat. So yeah, that was quite a unique one. Cass and Slide, Gladiator. I think we had every copy of that before it was signed to, I can't even remember what label it was on, maybe Fire. But yeah, before that, we had all the white labels of that. So there's a few records like that. When you have them exclusively, you see people coming in, oh, please, can I have one, please? It's like, yeah, of course, here you go. Buy as many as you like, sell them to your friends. But yeah, I mean, there's so many tunes from different times and eras. Like things like Stardust, Music Sounds Better with You.
I've got that on
it's
vinyl. Yeah.
yeah, I have, and it's not something people would think I would like and love, but it's just one of those tracks that people went, "Oh, I need that in my
Yeah.
life."
Such a
Um,
catchy tune. Yeah.
yeah, and there was always tracks like that that are just that the cooler kids would like, the people who played commercial clubs would like. It was just a real mixture. So
Mm.
I used to like moments like that that sort of transcended musical genres, because people used to come in and only want progressive. But if you gave them a house track and go, listen to this, they'd be like, wow. I think that's what I used to get excited by, really. And I suppose that's why I DJ in the style that I do. I don't stick to one style. In my head, it's all one thing. But maybe because I start a little bit deeper, I'm working my way through, getting a bit bigger, maybe a bit quirky, a bit melodic, and then end up a little bit tougher. Maybe that's because, well, it probably goes back to liking Iron Maiden and Chaz and
Yeah.
Dave.
Sure.
Yes.
But you said
Yes.
you were the progressive guy there. Is that
Yes.
because at that time were you by then kind of DJing out and about, and was that really the kind of music that you were playing?
Yes. Yeah, it was. I had a little night in Liverpool called Alderon, which was a tiny room above a pub. It legally held 90 people. And I used to do a night every Friday for 5 years. So this was 97 or something I started. And before that, I'd been DJing quite a long time. But by that time, I was getting quite well known for the progressive kind of sound. And I'd worked in a few record shops, but my goal was 3-beat. I had to work there. But at the time, Pez from DIY Crew, an amazing progressive house DJ, he was the buyer. And so there was no way he was going to leave. He loved it. The shop was very well known for being progressive. Sasha Digweed, Paul Van Dyke, Nick Warren, Steve Lawler, everybody shopped there. Everybody
Right.
shopped there. Not necessarily coming into the shop. We used to send packages to people. So when Pez said to me, I've been offered a job in the offices, which means I can't be the progressive buyer. After me pestering him for 2 years, he was like, I think you need to come and be the progressive buyer. It was just very natural for me to take over the reins. I mean, Pez had DJ'd my nights loads of times. I used to be in the shop every Saturday. People who used to come and play my nights would also go to 3-beat on a Saturday. So it just felt very, very natural. All my friends worked behind the counters. So yeah, I relished it. It was my dream job, and I loved it. It was a crazy, brilliant 10 years that I think people think it's very easy working in a record shop. It is so full on. It's relentless from
Mm,
literally the second you get in there to the second you get out of there,
mm,
especially on Friday when the new tunes come in. It can be absolute mayhem, but
mm,
amazing, really
mm.
amazing, amazing times.
Yeah, I bet there's not many a dull moment. Well, the terms of progressive, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, so hopefully you can enlighten me. But can you remember where the phrase first kind of how it first came about, who coined it, and who were the artists, the DJs who were initially championing that progressive sound?
Yeah, well, progressive's kind of gone through a few different reincarnations. So when it first came around, it must have been 1992 when records like the record labels like Gorilla and my mind's gone blank now. I can't remember any others. As soon as I finish, I'll list about 30 of them. But there was the kind of I remember Dom Phillips writing in Mixmag saying, "There's this new British sound, and it's like futuristic house, but all the people who like Balearic house seem to like it." And there's DJs like Fabi Paris, Justin Robertson, Andy Weatherall, even Farley and Heller, Express 2. So there was a lot of those DJs playing it.
Hmm.
So that went on for quite a few years. So big hits of that era would have been like Gat the Core, Passion, because it's got that kind of progressive-y feel. I'm sure there were plenty of others. And then after that, the sound kind of developed into the Sasha and Digweed kind of phase of progressive house, where the sound changed a little bit. I mean, it was always a little bit tougher and quirkier, but I suppose then the tracks really progressed. It started deep. It would go to first breakdown, it'd start building, go to a big crescendo, and then it'd be a mix out point. So you could make a whole journey out of these tracks kind of seamlessly because of the way they were made. And then there were so many DJs loving that kind of sound, and I was in the thick of that when I was in 3-beat and then in Cream, and then I had my mate Aldron. So it was all very interlinked. So yeah, I was very, very happy to be in the epicenter of it all.
Yeah. Before we talk about Cream, just quiz question: do you know what 3-beat is now? Because I actually looked it up on Google. It's not a record store anymore, is it not?
No. So it's been in a few different places. Nowadays, I think it's a shoe shop or something now, is it?
Yeah.
But that's where, yeah, clothes shop or something.
They're
yeah.
called the Outsiders.
That's right. So that was where 3B Records was. Now 3B came later on after the shop closed. Some of the lads bought all the stuff. Reopened 3B Records rather than 3-beat Records. So as well as that, 2 doors down was where 3-beat was, and then literally around the corner was where I started working at 3-beat. So yeah, it's and before that it was in Quiggins, which was an old fashioned kind of
Emporium, right?
Yes, it was like a indoor market stall that had all sorts.
Like a bit like a Affleck's Palace type.
Yes,
thing,
very
it?
like Affleck's Palace. Yeah. So it could have been tie-dye t-shirts, Just Sticks, or Underground House. So yeah, it was a crazy place.
I remember it well.
Yes.
Yeah. But Cream, so it was a fact that I actually didn't know until I started researching that you were once a resident there. What period was that? Was that when you were working at 3-beat, and how did that residency come about?
So mine was much later on. I always wanted to. I mean, I was a big Cream club. If I wasn't DJing, I'd be in Cream, because it didn't really matter who was on. There'd always be somebody who you'd really enjoy, and some of the lineups were just humongous. When you've got a club that's got Paul Oakenfold at his peak as a resident DJ, and then you could get Express 2 as residents, who were the biggest house act, and the other room was always like Sasha or Paul Van Dyke or Nick Warren. It was just epic. I mean, even the house DJs, they had like Doc Martin and Graham Park, or you'd get John Please Women. It was just such a good club. Also, special shout out to Paul Bleasdale, who was the resident in the Annex, who was an incredible DJ, and he was the epitome of how good a club resident could be. He could go on first, middle, last, and always be the best DJ on the night. So when my turn came along, I was in the latter days of Cream. I often joke that they brought me in to kill the club off. So it wasn't in a weekly. It stopped being weekly then. It was like bi-month. So every 2 months. But I played a lot of great parties. So, I mean, I still got to play with Sandy Kleinenberg and Sasha and Steve Lawler, and the list goes on and on. I loved it, and I loved playing all 3 rooms. They all had a different vibe, and I loved being a clubber in all 3 rooms. So to me, it was, a special kind of place, and it was nice to be able to play alongside. I mean, I warmed up for Tiesto just as he was getting really, really big, and all my mates were like, "Yeah, we're going to see Tiesto." I was like, "I've never heard of him." That night, it was absolutely rammed in there. It was so busy. I was like, "Why don't I know Tiesto?" And then obviously he became this massive superstar DJ. But that was very good times in Cream. Although I was discussing the other day with somebody, the first time I got in Cream, I was quite a competent DJ. I was very happy with myself. Anyway, I get to Cream, first time, main room, first record I'm playing, go to put the needle on the deck, and the decks are suspended. Right, it was on like a swing that was rubberized, so the deck sort of goes, and this is to stop bass feedback. But then when you try and touch it, it goes, whoa. And I was thinking, what, why? And then I went to do a mix, and it was a rotary mixer, right? So my whole mind, everything I've been waiting for, I was like, no, everything's wrong in my mind. The decks are bouncy. So I had to get a load of records, wedge them into the side so the decks wouldn't move.
Right.
Which is sacrilege, really. But It meant I could actually queue up properly and do stuff. But yeah, I was never a fan. I know all these DJs are like, yeah, rotary mixers are the future. Maybe they are, but maybe just because the first time I used one, I was under so much pressure. I was like, oh, I'm playing in Cream. I don't know how to use the mixer. I felt like a imposter syndrome. I was like,
Yeah,
no.
we've all been
So
there.
yeah. So in other rooms, when later on they just had like Pioneer mixers, I was like, oh, thank God for that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you talked about it being rammed. I started going in '95,
Mm.
probably between the years of '95 and '98. I think I spent most of my clubbing weekends in Cream, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'll never forget the queues that snaked out of, it was Wolstenholme Square, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Around the corner, people queuing the depths of winter
Yeah. Yeah.
with wearing very, very little, shivering the bits off. It
Yeah.
was just incredible. You'd sometimes queue, I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying an hour and a half,
It could be. Yeah.
yeah.
The queues were very, very big. Yeah, they used to go right down the road, past the Cream offices, around to past Mellow Mellow. So if you'd come out of Mellow Mellow, you'd gone in for a quick drink before the club, and you'd open the door.
Because that was that was the pre-cream bar, wasn't it, Mellow
Yes.
Mellow?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you knew the queues were that big, you'd be like, oh, we're in for a bit of a wait here. But,
Yeah, yeah.
But because I used to like it when you were queuing and you'd get nearer to the club and you'd hear because it had like a metallic roof, didn't it? And you'd hear, and you'd be like, hurry up, I want to get in. So yeah, exciting times.
But you mentioned the lineups, yeah, incredible lineups, and one of my most vivid memories of Cream were the flyers for when the flyers were released for the birthday lineups every
Yes.
year. They do a big party, and I remember it featured the who of everybody who was anybody in the DJ world at that time, and so I had a little backing preparation for this interview, and I'm just going to give listeners a little kind of example. So the fifth birthday in 1997, and it was always like the Friday and the Saturday, wasn't it? The birthday.
Yeah.
Friday, Roger Sanchez, Graham Park, Boy George, John Please Women. Like you said, he was a regular. Saturday, Paul Oakenfold, Sasha, Carl Cox, John Digweed, Darren Emerson, Paul Van Dyke, some guy called Dave Seaman. Have you ever heard of him? Maybe.
No.
Justin Robinson. Another example, 7th birthday, 99, Sasha Digweed, Hernan Cattaneo, Nick Warren, Seb Fontaine, Judge Jules. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on, all, over one weekend. I mean, yeah, it was incredible how they managed to, attract such talent, wasn't it?
Yeah, incredible.
I mean, it was the biggest club in the world. Would you say that's fair at that time?
Yeah, definitely
Or
one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me still? I've just leant on my microphone. It's gone off.
I can hear you. Yeah.
I just saw all lights come on. I've never seen before. Yeah, it was definitely one of the clubs. I mean, Ministry of Sound was obviously huge, especially, but that was more with the housey heads. But yeah, not many would have competed with it. Space in Ibiza, but of course that was only the summer. Space in Miami, maybe. But yeah, it must have been top 5, mustn't it? I mean, it was just, the lineups were legendary. They were just, and the thing is, it was my local club. I just thought that was normal, and all clubs had those kind of lineups all the time because we were so spoiled. It was just a crazy time for clubbing, and the lineups that they'd have on. I mean, it was clever as well because they used to do link-ups with, say, Golden in Stoke. So if Dave Seaman would do the early slot at Golden, he'd rush up to Cream because it was only an hour and a half drive, and play later on in Cream, or it could have been with Hacienda or Back to Basics. So it was nice to have this sort of northern clubbing network that meant quite a few cities could go and see these DJs, or at least some of them. And yeah, crazy times. I mean, I'm not sure many DJs get 2 or 3 gigs in a night anymore.
How long did your residency last for?
3 years, I think. I did the last 3 years. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And because I was playing there, people started taking notice then. They were like, oh, he must be half decent. So off the back of it, I'd get gigs in Shindig, which was Newcastle's kind of version of Cream. Really, really good. Renaissance and things like that. And it was easier for me to get guest slots in other clubs up and down the country when they could put Cream after your name. People would be like, oh, okay, we'll come and see him. So yeah, that was a good time for me. So that must have been I can't quite remember when it was. So it was later than 2000. Must have been like 2002.
Didn't it close? Well, I've read conflicting stories on the internet about when it closed. I've read some say 2002, but then some say as late as 2007.
Yeah, I think I played the last bit when it was Cream, as it was Cream, because it did stop for a bit, and then they still came back and they did other kind of parties. I mean, they're still going as a brand, but when it was the kind of Cream parties, they, I think maybe 2002 to 2004-ish, 5-ish, I kind of did.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Selador, the label that you co-run with Dave Seaman. Firstly, the name Selador. When I started looking into it, I was thinking, what Selador mean? And I was thinking, it sounds a bit Spanish. But I actually saw on your website, it references a quote from the 2001 cult movie Donnie Darko. Can you elaborate on how that kind of name was chosen for listeners?
Yes, you're right on both counts, actually. So, I was into record labels like Syncopat and Suara. So they're both Spanish record labels. And when we were trying to come up with a name, I said to Dave, I want something that sounds Spanish like that. And he happened to watch Donnie Darko that night. And there's a scene where Drew Barrymore is the teacher, and on the wall, on the blackboard, she's got Selador, as in opening the door to a cellar.
Yep.
And it said Selador. And Dave's light switched on his mind, went, Selador, that sounds Spanish. So he phoned me up the next day and went, what do you think of Selador? And I went, oh, what does that mean? He went, well, it's not a real word. I went, even better, yes. I said, where did you find it? And he explained about Donnie Darko. And so maybe our logo is slightly influenced by Donnie Darko Rabbit, just a little bit, but also changed just enough that we can't get into trouble for it.
Right.
So, yeah, it kind of led itself to be its own logo because we came up with that kind of thing. And it's, I love the name, to be honest. I think it's really cool. I like the fact that it doesn't mean anything. And if you Google Selador, it can come up with, I mean, there's a South American paint called Selador, and it's spelt our way as well. And I was like, wow. And I've also found a beer called Selador, which I'm still yet to try. One day I'll have a pint of Selador. I can never find it. But yeah, that's how it came around. So yeah, it definitely sounds Spanish because I really wanted a Spanish sounding record label name. So that worked out nicely, and it's nonsense, and I love nonsense.
Well, I just love the fact that Dave had that eureka moment from the two words cellar door.
Yeah.
Two very mundane words, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. But it comes together, then yeah.
It says that apparently it's the phrase that's the most beautiful to say in the English language is Selador.
I see. Yeah.
So we were like, yes, let's have it.
Yeah, when you bring it
together,
together.
that. Yeah. But yeah, we've only borrowed it. We changed everything just enough, I think, to keep the lawsuits off.
When did you first meet Dave then, and how did the idea for the label come about? Because it's been going 12 years now, I think you told me.
Yeah,
recently.
12 years. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It doesn't feel like we've been doing it 12 years. Well, some days it does, but yeah, sometimes I still think we're quite a new record label. When people ask me for advice, I'm like, why are you asking me? How did I first meet Dave? I met Dave, now this is going to start showing my age, in 1991, when Dave Ralph, who was the DJ who used to do the Quadrant Park Kids Night, started putting on house nights, and he booked this DJ called Dave Seaman, and he was part of Brothers in Rhythm, and they made the song that was my favourite track at the time called Peace and Harmony. So I knew Dave, and Dave was like, come and help us out, come and help me on the door or something, and you can take the money, and then by 11 o'clock we'll close, and then come and listen to, I think it was John Kelly, Dave Seaman and Stu Allen were all playing on a Wednesday night, as it used to be crazy back then. And yeah, I just spoke to Dave a little bit. And I was like, oh, I love your song, Peace and Harmony. I think it's amazing. He was like, thank you very much. Then Dave did another night at another club, which became my first residency. So that was a club in Aintree, another northern suburb of Liverpool. So this was a club in the middle of like an industrial estate. So there was no footfall there. You went there because you wanted to go there. And it started off as like a proper chrome, neon, Sharon and Tracy club, as they used to call it. So basically it'd be pop music. But Dave started doing an indie night on a Monday that slowly started bringing a bit of house in. And then after a while, there was no indie, it was just house music. And one day he said to me, I think I need a warm-up DJ. I was like, I'll do it. I'll do it. So that was my first club residency. And then anyway, we used to do all dayers, and Dave came and played for us, along with another DJ called Sasha. So it was just great to have all these DJs playing with us on a Monday night. And I've just been in touch with Dave ever since. And I used to always go and follow Dave around if he's playing the Hacienda or a Cream or Feel in Preston or wherever. I'd always go and I'd speak to him. And he was always like, all right, Steve, how are you? And then when I went to work in 3 Beat Records, I had to phone him up to say, Dave, it's Steve Parry. I remember that lad who always comes around to see him, Dick Ralphie's mate. Like, oh, yeah. Like, well, I'm looking after your tunes now. So we've known each other and had connections for a long, long time. So, yeah, I've known Dave for 30... Wow, it sounds a very long time when I say it like this. 34 years? Wow, scary, hey?
Yeah. You probably forgot the other part of the question, but yeah, so how did the label come about?
Yeah. Totally. I just got sidetracked. I was trying to remember how long it'd be. So, when I left 3 Beat Records, I didn't quite know what to do with myself. And so I came up with this. I was thinking maybe I can go online and help the DJs buy digital records, but I was thinking, how am I going to make money out of this? So I was trying to rack my brains for a way to do it. So I spoke to Dave Seaman. I was like, would you be up for this? He was like, yeah, if we can make it work. And because this is just as I'd left the record shop and it was the demise of vinyl. It was really, really, it was definitely losing its way. And things like Napster were getting really big. So people were getting music free compared to spending £8, £9, £10 on an import copy. So no wonder it got so big, of course. But when I suggested this model to Timo Maas that I would buy music for him on Beatport because he's another person I sold music to, he said, how are you going to what am I going to do with these 300 promos I get sent a week? And that was my light bulb moment. I was like, that's what I can do. I can go through everybody's inboxes and then make them a folder each week. So I started doing that for Timo Maas and Dave Seaman and quite a few others over the years. And then one day, Dave just said to me, what's your plans next, Steve? I said, I'm finally going to fulfill a dream of setting up a record label. And as I said it, and we were chatting on, and this is old school, MSN Messenger. I was chatting on that. As soon as I said that and press send, you just rang me straight away. Right, Steve, let's set up a record label together. And I was like, now, I think most people on the planet would say yes straight away. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that, Dave. And he went, why? I've got so many connections to him because everyone will just think this is Dave Seaman's new label and Steve Parry's the office boy. So he was like, no, everything will be 50-50. All decisions will be 50-50. It'll be our label. And he just slowly talked me into it. And I thought, yeah, well, if everything's 50-50, I can live with that. And yeah, so it began. And that was just over 12 years ago when we started putting everything in order. And he was watching Donnie Darko and we were coming up with names and funny rabbit heads and stuff. So, and here we are all those years later, still at it.
And has the sound and the ethos of the label evolved much since its conception 12 years ago?
Well, the way you can get signed to Selador is, and this is so hard to describe really to somebody who's trying to make a track. They'll be like, how can I make a track to get signed by you? The rule is I have to love it and play it, and Dave has to love it and play it. If one of those doesn't work, we don't sign it. No matter if one of them is absolutely loving it, if one says no, it doesn't happen. So what you've got to realise is me and Dave like housey stuff, deeper stuff, acidy stuff, proggy stuff, techno-y stuff, indie dance stuff. So it's basically stuff that we'd play and love in our sets. So you'd kind of have to know our sound. I mean, when we do play fairly similar, we don't play the same, but we were in a similar kind of musical ballpark. And it's nice that we've got that difference, so we can bring different elements and suggestions of stuff to the label. But has the sound progressed? I don't know, because it's still stuff that I'd play that he'd play. So probably our sound must have developed. But one of my friends came to see me DJ, and he said he hadn't seen me DJ for about 12 years. And he said, "Oh, it's dead weird. You still kind of play in the same way, but it's just tracks I've never heard before." And he went, "Like it was last time I saw you." I was like, "Okay, that's good. That's good." So, yeah, I mean, it must have developed with its sound. I mean, maybe sometimes we might go slightly Afro House tinged, but that was before Afro House got really big. We were into the deeper kind of sound. And then maybe sometimes, I remember one point we did go a little bit more techno-y, and then sometimes we go a little bit more wonky. So maybe it's to stop us getting bored, really. We just like the sound of progressive house. It does always develop. It does always change a little bit. So yeah, yes and no. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm the person who probably should know more than anyone, but I don't know. I'm not too sure.
Enough.
Yeah.
But has the fact that electronic music production has become so much more accessible now in regards to software and affordability and AI, even in the time that Selador's been running, have you noticed, well, two things here. Have you noticed, firstly, an increase in artists sending you music now since, Selador first started? And secondly, what about the quality of music being produced? Because I've heard quite a lot of people and read a lot about people saying there's, a dip in overall quality of some tracks as producers just become more reliant on said tools. And, is that something that you've noticed?
We definitely get more demos. I suppose the more established you are, though, you are going to get sent more stuff. But we also get, I mean, we've never put out a drum and bass track or a trance track, but we still get sent those. So people are just mass bombarding labels. The quality with stuff, yes. I think a lot of producers try and make a track that sounds like a track that's already out there. So sadly, you're only going to be a watered down version of that track rather than trying to be something different. So, I mean, I do notice that comes along, but then you'll get a track that you're like, yes, you're just instantly like, that's it. I love that. So, it swings and roundabouts. You definitely get a lot more kind of, I was going to say mediocre, but it isn't. It's stuff that's not right for us. It doesn't mean it's not right for somebody else. It's just not right for us. And to the person who's made it, they love it. And I don't want to, I never ever try and slag off a demo to anybody. I might suggest something like, I like the way you've done this, but maybe you could emphasize that bass line, or don't use that riff so much, because it's got a bit of respite on your ears rather than just bang, bang, bang. I always try and do a constructive criticism. Wow, it's a tongue twister. Whether people like that or not, I don't know. Some people are like, well, a cheeky thing. But yeah, I think I try and answer people in a way that I'd like to be answered. But one thing I would say to people who are sending demos, just because you send a track to one label and they knock it back, it doesn't mean it isn't good. It just means it isn't right for them. It just means, for us, it just means me or Dave mightn't have played it. But it doesn't mean Nick Warren mightn't play it, or Hernan Cataneo mightn't play it, or Sasha mightn't play it, or somebody completely different on another label. Because it is hard trying to get signed. So, yeah, don't be disheartened if you're making music and you're sending it to labels and you're not getting signed. You only need one person to say yes. You just got to keep finding that one person. We've signed tracks off people, and they've sent us their new demos, and they're like, I was like, have you got any others? And they're like, I've got you this I made 3 years ago. And I went, that's it, that's the one. And they're like, oh, weird. I've sent that to like 40 labels and got nowhere. I was like, no, that's the one. It's just that finding that right track for that right label at the right time. I
Yeah, and
definitely think that.
I've heard that story a number of times on this podcast from previous guests. Yeah,
Good, okay, good.
yeah. This is a difficult question, but do you have, apart from your own, of course, do you have an all-time favorite release on Selador?
Oh, that's putting the cat amongst the pigeons. I have to speak to all these artists all the time. The one that I absolutely love, which I think was the label's turning point, was Jaap Lighthart, I Know Change. He originally sent it to us as a demo. Now, he's a Dutch producer. I'd never heard of him before, I don't think. He just sent us a demo out of the blue. And it was an instrumental. And I said, Jaap, do you know what? I think there's something in it, but it needs a vocal. Thinking he'd just put a little ooh, ooh, ooh or something on it. Now, he got a vocalist called Alice Rose, who's German, I think she is. She did this vocal, and I was like, oh, that's really good. That's really, really good. So that track was really good. But then we've been trying to get an artist called Show B, who's also German, who he now goes by the name of, the real name, Matthias Schober. But we've been trying to get a Show B remix for years and years, and we were never getting anywhere. And he went, oh yeah, I like that. There's something in this. So he did this remix and he sent it to us, and it blew me away. It was cutting edge, futuristic. It was deep. It was vocally, it was accessible. It was just one of those tracks that people, I mean, everybody played it. We used to get a few DJs supported, but Dixon to Sven Vath to Tenaglia, all these DJs jumped on this. And it was just weird the way it happened, because if Jaap hadn't sent it to us and I hadn't said, oh, put a vocal on it, and if he hadn't got Alice Rose, which then caught the attention of Show B to go, oh yeah, I can remix this. It's just weird the way sometimes all these things happen. And it's the one track that I play, it's always on my USB stick, because I always know, oh, this is the right moment to play this. And yeah, so that for me is a special track. But I could, if you set me off, I'll do your top 50. So you don't want to do that. Maybe another day we'll do the top 50 rundown.
Yeah. I'll tape it and listen to it on Monday.
I was thinking of that as you said it. At number 49, it's everyone.
Let's talk about you as a producer. When did you first start producing electronic music?
Right. Well, over the years, I tried to make a few tracks and I wasn't very successful. So in about, I've forgotten the year, I should know this. It was around 2000s, maybe 1998 or 1999. I used to have a lot of records by Evolution. They ran a record label called Fluid Recordings. Now, that was my favourite label. Evolution I'd known for many years because they used to come along to those nights of Fallows that Dave Ralph used to do and Dave Seaman was on and stuff. So I'd spoken to them for years and I was like, I want to make a tune with you. I want to make a tune with you. So eventually they caved in, as I say to them. They're like, we didn't cave in. We wanted the time to be right. But that's Barry Jameson and John Sutton. So they came in and I made a track called Jawa, and that was released on Fluid. So that was the first track I did. Then Barry and John, sadly, the label folded. They had a problem with, I think the distributor shut down, owed them loads of money. So they had to close the studios down, and then Barry moved to America. So I couldn't make any more tracks for them. Tried to make a few more tracks for people. I was like, it's just not happening. So there's 10 or 20 tracks with other people out there that just have been probably recorded on a DAT that have been deleted by now that I can't remember myself. And then I thought I need to learn how to do this myself. So I went to SAE music school in Liverpool, and I didn't realise that my teacher of the class was Paul Nolan, who was a producer I know. He used to come and DJ at my nights, Aldron. So I did that. I went on to a music production course. I think it was 2 nights a week for like 6 months, and that was good. I learned how to do it, but I knew what to do, but it was a little bit slow at everything. So Paul Nolan, who was the teacher, was like, listen, I'll engineer some of your tracks. He went, you'll still be coming up with the ideas, playing the music in, putting the samples in. He said, I'm just doing the technical stuff. Now, what I realised when we did that is he could work 10 times faster than I could on my own, so I could actually get the ideas down. So I work with an engineer when I make a track. So I was with Paul Nolan for about 3 years, and then I've been with Jay Gilbert, who's worked with everybody from. He does all the Dave Seaman stuff, which is obviously how I got introduced to him. But he's done stuff with David Morales. I mean, you, Nick, Darren Emerson, Danny Howells. He was worked with so many great people. So I loved working with Paul. It was brilliant. But Jay, as well as producing my ideas, I mean, Paul used to do this. He used to push me in slightly different directions, try and push me out of the comfort zone. And I'm very grateful when people do that, because otherwise, that same old thing, you could just do a watered down version of what you've already done. But if somebody's pushing you along, then that's great. And also trying to keep up with how many plugins and stuff that are coming out on a weekly basis, and which effects to do and how to use them and how to get the best out of them. When Jay is sitting in the studio all day, every day, he knows these things. So I can describe them to it or play him tracks. Because I go in with an idea and I go in with lots of references and I'm like, listen to this bass line. He's like, okay, yeah. I'm like, listen to this acid line. He's like, okay, yeah. I'm like, listen to the way this riff comes in here. And he's like, okay. I'm like, and I like these samples. So then we just sit in and we just got a big melting pot and we just try and make it all kind of work together. And still, I still always try and make it sound like I've made it. I think it always has to sound like me. That's always important to me. I don't think anyone else will ever notice, but to me, it sounds like I've made it. Then I'm happy at the end of it. So, I mean, there'll be producers listening to this going, "Oh, he's cheating there," but I know how to do it. It's like I know how to change a tire, but I still take it to the garage to fix because they can do it faster than me. That's the way I look at it. I could paint our bedroom, but I wouldn't be very good at it. I get a decorator in, and if Pink Floyd and the Beatles had an engineer, then that's good enough for me. I can live with that and any criticism that comes my way. I mean, I'm not ghost producing. It's completely different. That's when somebody will write it for you. I couldn't do that. I need to have every decision and every intricacy, all those tiny bits. I spend a long time doing loads of bits that no one would ever notice, but I know they're there. I know that the way that changes there, the way that changes there, the way this comes in. So yeah, I like all that geekiness, which you don't get with ghost producing.
I was going to say, isn't that the relationship between Christian and Frank in Arm? You know, Frank does all the kind of technical engineering side, and he just kind of comes up with a lot of the ideas and says, I think you should do this and change that.
Yeah. I mean, there's people like Sasha and Charlie May over the years, and I mean, there's Nick Muir and John Digweed. There's countless ways of that. I mean, I remember writing something on Facebook about it. Someone is a techno producer who I really look up to is Christian Smith. And I said it and people are like, oh, you're not doing it properly. And Christian Smith was like, but this is what I do. You use a professional to get the best out of you. So I'm happy with that. I'm more than happy with that.
Cool. And you've got a new track coming out. Want to tell us about that?
Yes, it's called Be Happy. Although it's changed its name about 20 times. By the time this comes out, it might change its name again. I just recently did this with Jay down in London, because this is another thing. When I'm at home and I'm trying to make tracks, I'm easily distracted, whether it's the kids, the fridge calling my name, food, eat me, or the phone going, or emails to do. When I go to London, I switch off my phone, switch off my laptop, and just sit in the studio for 2 days. So I like going in the studio and really, really getting deep into things. And we made this track, Be Happy, which is coming on Selador. So we started it in November, and the beauty of nowadays making your music and you can test it out is you can then go back and tweak it. So I've just given it a few little tweaks over the last sort of few months. I've been playing it out, and I'm happy with it now. It's a good name to be called Be Happy. It's quite a happy kind of uplifting track. It's full of energy. I suppose it's progressive house. I don't even know what progressive house is anymore, really. I don't think I play progressive house, but I'm classed as a progressive house DJ. So I think bits of it sound like David Morales, and bits of it sound like Digweed, and then it's also got a soulful vocal in it. It sounds like me. Anyway, it just sounds like me. So that's when I knew I was happy with it at the end. I was like, I'm happy with that. Sounds like me. So that's coming on Selador. Hopefully with a remix. I'm just trying to sort it out as we speak.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's have a little listen to that right now. And do you have a release date for that?
This is coming in. We're just shuffling a few things around at the moment. It depends on. Um, we normally try and have 2 or 3 releases on the go at the moment, and sometimes a one remix of a one release can run late or something. So in theory, it's going to be sort of late July for that one.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, but to be TBC, as they say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a few more questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously things have changed hugely since you first started out in the industry. How much have you had to adapt to the, constantly changing clubbing and just general industry landscape,
Yeah.
to continue to have a successful career? And do you think, it's a case of do adapt or kind of die in terms of your career now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I worked in the record shop, I was a die-hard vinyl head. So when CD decks came out, I was like, I don't want to be on those. But every club I was turning up had vinyl decks and CD decks. And then I was very lucky because I was working. I had a radio show by then, and I was in 3-Beat Records. I was playing at Cream. I had my own Night Aldron. So people used to send me CDRs. So basically like a promo studio copy of their track. So I'd have it before it was out. So I was thinking, well, I've got to play this on CD. What's the point of me waiting 2 months to play this? And then I'd start playing 1 or 2 in my sets. Then it became 3 or 4. And then one day I was like, oh, that's it. I can do my whole set on CD now. So if I hadn't developed, I would have been musically behind where I could have been. And so I think you do have to adapt a lot. And of course, technology is always going to change with whether it's the CD decks that then turn into MP3 players or the mixer that you're using. And then, of course, social media came along. And then I think if you don't adapt and if you don't develop your sound as well to try and stay fresh, you're going to get stuck in an era and a musical hole that just goes around and around, and you won't be able to escape. So I've always tried to find and play music that isn't around yet. So I've always been pestering people, trying to get the newest of the newest of the newest. So for me, it's quite natural to always want the next thing, next, because by the time other people are playing it, I want to have moved on, and do something big. So yeah, I do think you do have to move with the times, because it's not like people are still recording the sets on cassettes anymore. And when you say it like that, it sounds insane that people wouldn't want to move with the times with technology. Oh, sorry, I got excited then. I started coughing. Like you still see people raging on Facebook. Oh, you're not a proper DJ unless you play vinyl. It's like, well, you are. I saw Seb Fontaine get an interview the other day, and he said he went to he was out in a club, and this fellow was like, oh, it's just button pressing nowadays. And he went, well, it isn't. He's like, what job do you do? He's like, I'm a dentist. And he went, well, so do you use the same technology from 30 years ago to do a root canal that you do now? And he went, no. And he went, well, why should I? And he said, this fellow was like, oh, I've never thought about it like that. Yeah, why wouldn't we use technology? You've got to keep up with the times. And yeah, I mean, especially in an industry like this where things are so fast moving and the musicality. I mean, it's sad now that the shelf life of tracks are 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. So yeah, it's its very nature to be next, and trying to find the next thing. So like with Selador or our club nights, we're trying to bring we bring our own person to do the lighting because they can know our moods, and we've got someone who's done videos for us. We have videos of. We used to have a record called The Naughty Forest. So when we first start, it's visuals of this forest. And then occasionally a few things will start flashing and magic mushrooms will start turning into strobes. And then we have videos of the dancing rabbit, Harvey, come out. And so we have to keep progressing, because otherwise you wouldn't be any different from a club in the 90s. You've just got to always keep moving forward and keep looking for new things. Yeah, most certainly.
And if you could give the young Steve any advice that, looking back, would have helped you when starting out, or at any particular point in your career for that matter, what would it be?
I I think keep pushing and keep asking people for things. I got out the habit for quite a few years of not asking people for gigs, just thinking they'd fall in your lap, but they don't. Promoters aren't sitting there thinking, "Oh, we'd better book Steve." No, they're thinking about the people who've emailed them or Facebook them or got in touch or supported their events. I think if you keep pushing and asking, and also another thing, I had a list of goals of things I wanted to do DJing. So I'd wanted to work in 3-beat, I wanted to be resident in Cream, and the last big one I had was go and play at John Digweed's Bedrock. So when that happened, I was like, whoa, it was amazing. But then I didn't set any goals for years. So even though I was doing all right, I didn't. It was only when I was like, oh, I need to start a record label, that then it starts happening. I think the fact that people probably call it manifesting nowadays, but I think the fact you're thinking about something, you're aiming towards something, it's only down to you to do steps to kind of make it happen. Is it manifested? I don't know. I suppose you're making it happen yourself, really. So yeah, always have goals. In fact, I was just trying to come up with some new goals very recently. So otherwise, I'm not just sitting happy where I am. I just want to keep the next kind of things.
And what does, and talking about goals, what does the future then hold for you and for Selador? Have you got any kind of gigs coming up in the summer that you're really excited about, and obviously other releases apart from your own?
We've got so we've been really pushing our Seladoria parties. So that's the record label Selador. We try and, like I was saying, we bring the lights and make the sound. We make, as the music grows of the night, the lights will sort of build and the visuals will build. That's kind of our brand. So we're trying to expand that. So we've got parties with Nick Warren in Guernsey. We've got we just had one in Amsterdam.
You had one in Birmingham the other week.
Yeah,
was that
Birmingham.
your first one? Was that your first
one? No, it was our first one in Birmingham. So this is we've done about 10 or 15 of them over the last few years, whereas now they're getting more and more regular. So the one in Birmingham was with Quiver. We've got one in Skyline, which is in Glasgow, with Rodriguez Jr., Danny Howells, and Just Her. I nearly announced something that I shouldn't tell you about. I had to stop myself. I was thinking, stop thinking about that. But yeah, there's quite a few parties in the pipeline. So we want those to grow. I want to keep making music. I've been getting more and more international gigs, a lot around Europe. I want to have more of those. That's a great thing to do. Because one of my hobbies is travel as well. So to be able to travel to a city that I mightn't necessarily have wanted to go to, like been to Marseille or Lisbon or Oslo, I mightn't necessarily have gone there otherwise. So it's nice to be able to go there, DJ, meet the promoter, who, it's always nice to meet somebody else. It's a like-minded soul in a different city and country, and then get to be a tourist. It's quite an amazing job, really. It ticks a lot of boxes for me. You can get to play new music as well, so meet lots of people, and I love seeing the reaction to people on the dance floor of a track that they haven't heard before. That makes me excited. It's like, ooh, I know what's coming in a minute. And when it does that bit, it's like, yes, that's my happy moment. Then I'm like, yeah, okay, you're with me now.
Amazing. Well, listen, final question. It's the question that I always ask to finish. For those listeners who might not have heard of Steve Parry before this podcast, but want to know more, how can they find out more about you in regards to updates about what you're up to, DJ gigs, releases, and obviously Selador as well?
Well, for me, Steve Parry DJ, that's everything. Website, Instagram, Facebook. I've even attempted to go on Twitter. TikTok. That's the one. I've shown my age getting the name wrong. But I don't do any silly dances yet. Maybe I'll build up to that. But yeah, Steve Parry DJ, or one word. Sorry. And Selador, just look for seladorrecordings.com. Yeah. So that's our website, our SoundCloud, our Mixcloud. And you can check out our lovely merchandise on the website as well.
Yeah. And of course, I will leave all these links to accompany the podcast in the blurb as well.
Thank you.
Listen, Steve, it's been amazing. I really enjoyed walking down memory lane with you, in certainly in regards to Liverpool, and it's nice to talk to someone who's old enough to actually experience the city during the time that I spent there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish you all the best with the future and all your upcoming projects, and thank you very, very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me as well. Much appreciated, for letting me witter on for an hour or whatever it was.
I've enjoyed it. Honestly, I had many more questions and I could have probably waited on for a lot longer as well. But, yes, thank you. We talked about attention span, probably people wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.